Thanks for joining us today on the New Normal podcast. We have Caroline Hynes, Director of Product from Zendesk with us today. Good afternoon, Caroline.
Good afternoon, Gavin.
How are you?
I'm adjusting is probably the best way to put it.
Good to see. Do you want to just give a bit of background about what your role is in Zendesk and how you're kind of working at the moment and the setup of the team?
Yep. So I'm the Director of Product for Explore, which is our analytics product for Zendesk. We often talk about Zendesk as being a highly distributed organization anyway. However, those distributed teams tended to work together closely in the same region. Before everything happened with COVID-19, my team was based in San Francisco, Dublin, and Montpellier in the south of France. And so there was some remote element to our roles anyway, but we did a lot of traveling to spend some time in person, whether that was full teams coming to Dublin or to France or individuals going. So that has obviously all stopped and changed.
And was there a big adjustment to kind of, become the virtual office, or it's obviously a cloud-based company anyway, but was there a big adjustment of how the team functioned? It's obviously 2 weeks now, and it's people are starting to become normal at what they do and times and different things.
Yeah, so I think there's a mix there for various reasons. One, like we're an organization that allowed some element of work from home, so sometimes people took advantage of that 1 or 2 days a week, so they were set up for that. But for others, it was different because they didn't have a home office, they weren't set up. Having, for engineers and designers, having multiple screens is very important, and not just having your laptop, and just basic things that you don't think about when it's kind of a longer term rather than 1 day a week or 1 day every so often situation. And then that's compounded by the fact that you're not at home on your own. You have either flatmates or partners or children or other people who aren't normally there, who are normally off doing their own thing during the day, keeping you company as you try to work. So I think the adjustment was more environmental and situational rather than us as an organization being set up to do that. Like, we all have our VPN, we all have our Zoom access. We work with teams in other parts of the world anyway for certain projects. So we're used to connecting ad hocly like that. But I think for it being a longer term new norm, it was a bit of adjustment, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's people always say to me, it's how you enjoy working from home, and I have to say it's working. It's not working from home. It's having an office at home is completely different to our normal days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's probably been the biggest adjustment I've seen and talking to people. How did the organization then kind of support your work from home policy? Was it an easy setup? Was there a few teething problems?
So speaking from the Explore team, was directly involved with that, the comms are very clear. I think the company's done a really good job of kind of having frequent brief comms rather than like big lengthy comms where people have to digest a whole lot of information. So having frequency over long big details is important. They gave enough of a head. We'd actually decided to close the offices globally ahead of the mandatory work from home in Ireland anyway. So people were given 24 hours to come in and collect what they wanted from the office, not furniture, but like their laptops, their headphones, all those kinds of things, so that they could work from home. And then we were given an allowance around buying monitors or other equipment that we'd need to be able to be effective and efficient in that as well. So very mindful, I'd say, and very deliberate around the fact that this is not a 1 or 2 day thing. This is a mid to long term thing. So people need to be able to set up so that they can work the same way that we want them to work as much as possible when they're in the office.
Okay, well, and kind of just making it a bit more normal, have you implemented anything new for your direct reports, the team, the company? Is there anything different to how you would have managed traditionally or kind of led?
Yeah, so I think as an organization, at the kind of the bigger macro view, we are having more regular town halls than we would have had, and they're obviously recorded, and they alternate the time zones so that we can kind of be live in the different regions at different times. From my own team, myself and the director of engineering, we've implemented a stand-up, like a 30-minute stand-up on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday for our leaders. And that's really a couple of things. It's to sync on the work in progress and kind of make sure that the momentum is there, and for us to help if there's any barriers. But it's also like a sanity check and a mental health check. Like,
Yeah.
how are the people doing? Are like, can you start to see people struggle a little bit, even though they're still turning up, and just making sure people are okay in the broadest sense of the world, not just the work that they're doing.
Yeah, no, that is the mindfulness part. It's good to, you know, even just have somebody to talk to face to face. It is, you know, that isn't your family that you've seen for, you know, day in, day out. You know, it's always nice to see that. So it's good to hear. And has there been any kind of, you know, how you structure that, or how is it everything done remotely now? So is it through different toolings, or is it just kind of general kind of communication through Slack or Zoom, or what way have you done it?
So I think it's a good forcing function for documentation, everybody's favorite thing. So I think for those more casual conversations, in that, like, you know, reporting in and statuses, like those stand-ups, we don't document them. We kind of just we talk, and if there's actions, we follow up. We do use Slack, we use Jira and Confluence. However, a lot more things are being written down. Like, we're using Google Docs more than I've seen it used, and sheets, and just people are recording their strategic thinking, where we've so that it can be shared and reviewed, and we can collaborate offline with it. So that's actually a benefit, and that's something that we'll keep as we go forward. So I think it's just a good forcing function for assuming what's in your head not everybody knows, and that you don't have those water cooler, coffee break, sidebar conversations. You kind of have to be deliberate in who you're sharing it with and how you're sharing it, and creating those records.
And it's an interesting, because I've spoken to a few people about the new norms within business, and you know, you mentioned it earlier about you were kind of working from home, and people would take advantage of it 1 day or 2 days a week. Do you think that will just now become common practice, that, you know, the whole, you know, that we all believed in working from home type thing is now out the window, and people are just realize it's actually an easy enough function to do?
Yeah, so I think there will be more of an appetite for remote working, for sure. Like, we have some people who are remote working 100% of the time within the organization, but I think how we think about work from home will change. I know myself that I work from home on a Wednesdays generally anyway. I would not want to be remote all of the time. I need to be in the office and having talking to the big humans and interacting that way. And the in-person piece is very important to me. But I think we will have a different outlook on what work from home means, and what we can expect from people who do that. And, you know, just on that, like, the structure, when people feel that they have structure in their lives and that they can kind of control their environment, they tend to be more productive. So we're seeing now, because there are children at home, people might be working super early, like 7 to 12, and then take a break for a couple of hours in the day, and then come back online in the evening, or whatever way they're structuring their day so that it works for this new life that they're in over this couple of months. But the work is still getting done, and the work is getting done to the same quality. So you're demonstrating a trust, I suppose, that you can only do by doing. Like, you can talk about work from home and just worry in the back of your mind about productivity and focus. But I think this is demonstrating that even when you have so many pulls on your attention, because everybody's in the same environment and same house, people are still focusing when they can, and the work is still getting done.
Yeah, like it is forcing a lot of the outcome management of businesses that you know, you can read documents, everything online about how everything now is an outcome management, where it wasn't. It was still very much a
presenteeism.
You look at that person, they're working really hard, aren't they? You know, so I do believe that's going to be a great way of kind of forcing traditionalists into a kind of the new normal of the outcome based management systems, where things, I personally don't think things will ever go back to the way they were, and I think there's going to be a lot of learnings from the last 2 weeks or next few weeks or whatever it's going to be, and how that is adapted into how we work and manage ourselves going forward. What would you be, already in the last couple of weeks, what would be your kind of major takeaways that you've learned, either how you manage people or yourself, or what ways, and bring that into a more kind of 9 to 5 or back to the normal way of working?
So for me, because I do have people who aren't in the same office as me, they're not remote, they're in another Zendesk office, I think I tended to like Slack and ask a quick question, and there might be a couple of questions back and forth, whereas this has kind of encouraged me to do a quick Zoom call. and answer those questions and have that face-to-face time. I feel like I've spoken in person to my team in both in France and in San Francisco more in the last 2 weeks, like just in person, than I would have normally. I think doing things like that is very important. So that for sure. I think one of the other things we've been doing is kind of checking in every day just to see how everybody's doing.
Yeah.
And you do that with your colleagues in the office that you see them, you're sitting beside having your coffee, whatever, but not necessarily to your staff that aren't in the same location. And that's been really good. And you've seen kind of the teams themselves just checking in and seeing how people are doing. So not just keeping up those kind of social norms, even though you're not in the same office, I think will persist as well. And the documentation thing as well is very important, I think.
And it seems people are becoming a bit more kind of human again, and are actually asking questions and wanting to know. I actually and genuinely hope you're okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Apart from the traditional email of "I hope all is well,"
right,
they actually are like, I hope everybody's well.
Because there's weight now. When you ask someone, "How are you?" there's actual weight behind that, even if you're not thinking about it when you write it, right?
I definitely think that's going to come along. And then, how are you managing the work-life balance then, as a Monday to Friday, or 5 days a week working from home? What is your have you created a new routine for yourself?
So I've just actually was talking to a colleague of mine about this. I'm struggling a little bit with finding the difference between separating work time and home time, and not necessarily that I'm working anymore, but it's the same space where I'm working is the same space where I'm living. So I'm constantly reminded of it. And my natural instinct is I'm quite happy to sit down and tip away kind of all the time. If the laptop is there, I'll keep plugging away, and having to stop myself consciously from doing that is important. But I am finding this week, and it's only like week two into three, where I'm kind of like, okay, there is no getting away from work, or there's no getting away from home, and how am I going to manage this for the next couple of weeks? I don't have an answer to that, but I am starting to feel it. And it's like I only ever bring my laptop into the office, and I don't take it out of the home office until this is over and we're back to whatever this new normal looks like when we go back to work, and creating a space that is my brain just associates with work and nowhere else in the house is associated with that.
And are you like still the same kind of routines that you would have had beforehand? Have you kind of, I was reading something there about trying to wake up at the same time as you usually would.
So I still get up, I still go for my run in the morning, and I tend to start my day anywhere between 8:30 and 9:30 depending on the day, and try and keep then regular hours in the evening. And that's one of the things I've been trying to encourage the team to do as well. It's like, it's not an always on culture because we're at home, right? We have an always on culture mentality anyway when we're working, because we've got Slack on our phone, our email on our phone. But just because you're at home and you're working from home doesn't mean when someone slacks you at 9 o'clock at night, you have to answer it. It can wait, unless they're telling you you're the only person that can save the company right now if you won't answer the Slack message. And so getting into those habits, and other things like one of the teammates has said, like setting up parameters for yourself about making people aware of what your working hours are. So like one guy had put on a Slack today, not available until a certain amount of time, because that's when he was starting his work day. And someone else puts on working until whatever time in Dublin time. So they're really soft signals for when people are working, but they're effective. Yeah.
And you're saying beforehand that you're still onboarding people and still hiring. How has that process been? Has it been, has that changed how you would have traditionally hired, and how have you adapted to that?
So before we went fully work from home, like in the manager work from home, we were starting to do those interviews remotely anyway. And it obviously, you can only gather so much from a person remote if you've never met them. So you're kind of missing out on that human face-to-face interaction in real life. But we have really good hiring processes, really good guides. So like, the structure is the same. Even though the person isn't in the room for the final rounds. The onboarding is remote. I actually haven't attended an onboarding remote session yet, and I probably will in the next couple of weeks. But we were very quick at saying the content that we have is available. Like, we can easily give that over Zoom. We can easily create like breakout rooms in Zoom and have people interact and kind of get them talking in the same way. We've also started to do kind of coaching sessions for managers and for leaders in the organization, like up and down the organization, for how to support and coach the teams during this time as well. And that's obviously all done online using the tools that you want to use at your teams and you're collaborating day to day. So I guess we were looking that our content was ready to be lifted and shifted into a digital delivery form anyway. But it's got to be weird for the new hires, right? Like they're joining, they're getting their laptops couriered out to them with the instructions and how they don't have any interaction with their teammates. Some of these people potentially will have interviewed all virtually and will be joining, and that will be like a human touchless process the entire way and kind of in real life. So it'll be interesting when this is over to hear their feedback on the process and what we should keep and what we should change. Yeah,
it's interesting because obviously your office is designed, for big collaborative environments, and it's a lovely office. It's losing that part of your organization and that culture part. Is there any ways you've gone about trying to instill your team culture through remote ways? Is there,
so
Friday drinks or
so people are still doing like morning coffees, virtual morning coffees. People are doing Friday happy hours. There's lunches being scheduled every day, like if people can join, and then even doing workshops. So one of the senior guys in my team, with the senior product designer, led a virtual, it was the first time we'd done it in our org, a fully virtual workshop where we were designing things from the ground up and doing very heavy thinking, but it was all done remotely. We got to the same outcomes. They were using the breakout rooms in Zoom, using Miro so that we could collaborate in real time and see that. So like they actually ran a 3-day workshop fully remotely, which will change going forward, how we assume that we have to get everybody in the room for these things. Where
I was just about to say, that will change organizations. It will change how people deliver seminars and different things like that, which is great for one side of the world, not for the others that are delivering it properly, that have that's how they've done it forever. So from that, there's lots of takeaways from the last couple of weeks. What would be your keeps, and what would you say I could do without?
In what I've learned over the last 2 weeks, so I definitely keep the kind of the daily check-ins with the teams, and kind of just the temperature check for how people are actually doing, not how they're getting on with their work, but how they are actually doing, I think is important. And keep the how we're sharing and collaborating on documentation and information. I would take away, I think we've gone to an overindulgence on meetings. I think that we've filled our calendars with time, because people no longer have the constraints of having to find a room and having all these things. So I think we're a little we need to find the balance between the right amount of meetings and what can be done offline and asynchronously versus having to have a meeting about things, and that'll balance itself out in time, I hope. So I think there is that. And I hope that we've created an environment where people can put their hand up and say, I'm struggling and this is hard. And that's okay. And give them the support that they need.
Well, so I'll both take up much more of your time, but what would your advice, or for other leaders within businesses, to help them at the moment? If you've put up your hand, what was probably the best advice you got, and what would be the best advice you'd like to pass along?
So the best advice I got was about being vulnerable. You don't have all the answers. You don't need to know all the answers. Your team are going to have questions, and that it's okay to say, I actually don't know that right now. Let me either go back, or we don't know, or we're trying to figure it out. And I think being transparent as much as possible about those things creates a trust. It also creates that we're all in this together. This is new for everybody. There's nobody who has all of the answers. So I think what was the second part of your question?
What would you pass on? What would be your one piece of advice, apart from being the vulnerable side? What would be your other kind of key takeaway?
I think don't rely on text, Slack or email to communicate with your teams. Hop on those Zoom calls, have those very quick 10-minute chats, 5-minute chats. You you might be in a house full of people, but someone else might be working in isolation on their own and might be grateful of the face-to-face time. And, you know, it just creates that human contact a little bit more, more readily, and it's just as easy as slacking back and forth.
All right. Thanks a lot, Caroline, for your
No
time
worries,
today.
Gavin.
And I will speak to you soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for
Bye.
joining us.